you're not seeing things. This wrap-up is actually on time. Hello my lovely friends, it's Margaret. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're coming in to do the wrap-up for my July reading. That'll include the books I've read, that will include a couple of new Avengers I'm adding to my team, and a quick update on where I am with the Full Metal Alchemist reading challenge. Please don't hurt me, Sarah. I will have timestamps down in the description box if you want to jump around. Feel free to do so. If there's a specific book or part that you're looking for, go ahead, do that. So I actually finally got Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. Started Sam's board in February with Slay, and then I read Song of the Crimson Flower in March, and then June I finished his board out with Siege and Storm and the group book for the month of June, which was This Is How You Lose the Time War. And then the one that I did in fact add in the month of July was Nick Fury. So we started Nick Fury in January with Legendborn, and then in June I read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. That fulfilled those prompts on the board. I'll have all of these linked down below, I guess, if you're interested in my thoughts on some of these books. And then we got Book with a Cat on the cover by using Shah, because there is a tiger on the cover. And then I ended up fulfilling the final prompt. I had a book I was gonna use for it, but I needed him for the readathon, whatever it was we were doing that weekend. I needed him for Age of Ultron. And boss battle, that's what we call them, boss battles. I needed him for the boss battle, so I just used my Loki reward to complete that prompt, I think. I think that's how I did that. I either did that or I used someone else's power. Did I use someone else's power? I will figure that out later, because I have notes somewhere that I took. As far as the Full Metal reading challenge went, I got 2 of the 5 prompts done. We'll talk about them a little bit more later, but they were Arusha and the End of Time to fulfill Wax Wings, and The Sound of Stars to fulfill Keep Moving Forward. So now it is time to get into the books that I read in July. So in July I read 6 books. It was a pretty decent reading month. I had a 3.5 average rating as far as star ratings go. I didn't have a lot of, there were not a huge amount of 5 stars, but that is not a normal reading month for me. Usually most of my reads are 3 and 4 stars. The first book that I finished in the month of July is Heartbeat Braves by Pamela Sanderson. This is the first book in an adult romance series that focuses around characters who work at this urban Indian center in a city that I don't remember the name of. I do remember that it is about Rayanne. She's been working at this center for quite a few years. They have been trying, they're struggling to stay afloat and keep the center going, because what their job is they don't only just do cultural events and education, they are also there to help out any Native Americans that are in the city. They do a lot, or at least Rayanne does a lot with taking care of the elders. So it's part educational, part community service, making sure that their people are taken care of. So they've got this big festival that they are working towards. They're hoping to move into a new center, so they'll be able to do the festival there. And then because they are struggling, the board of directors decides they need some outside help, and so one of the board members sends his son Henry in to basically take over all of Rayanne's projects, is what ends up happening. So I thought that this was really cute. I actually was not terribly mad about the setup, because usually when you have a guy taking away the hard work that a woman has done, a point was made, and I think that the male protagonist was very aware of that point and trying to both fulfill what he's being expected of him while also trying not to completely trying to recognize the fact that there's a lot of work that's happened before him. It was a little slow to make me care about their relationship, but once we got past the initial hurdle back and forth, I was into it. The one thing I will say is the ending. The ending was one chapter that should have been 3. It was so odd. So much happened in that final chapter, and I was just usually I'm people need to shorten this. We could have done this as 1 chapter, but this I'm we needed 2 chapters for this. We needed to have this needed to be paced out just the littlest bit more than it was. Maybe 10 more pages. Just give us some time to absorb what's happening before you end the book. While Rayanne and Henry's plot was wrapped up, this is definitely not one that is meant to be read by itself. This is definitely you are supposed to read the whole series, because they really just cut that book off and you're where's the next book? I ended up giving Heartbeat Braves 3 stars. I liked it. I thought it was a good book. Not my favorite, but I do see promise for the rest of the series, so I'm really interested to see where the other books go. The next book we need to talk about is Whispers of a Shadow and a Flame by L. Penelope. This is the 2nd book in the Earth Single Chronicles. This is an adult fantasy romance series about 2 separate countries that have been separated by a magical veil for a very long time, because every time this veil falls, one of the countries tries to invade the other country. So basically, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can't tell you, but the first book follows two people on the other side that they're trying to keep the veil up, they're trying to save the veil, and then it falls, and they're trying to deal with the aftermath of that. That one is much more focused on the romance between those two characters. This one is focused on a character that we hear about in the first book, that would be Darvin, and another character that we meet in this book. They are on the Library side of the veil, and it basically follows, sort of a similar timeline for the first book, but it's about him and Kiara trying to deal with events on their side of the veil as this giant thing is happening, and they're having to deal with some of the aftermath of that. This one is much more focused on the world and the politics. Like, the romance is still there, but it is a much wider reaching book than the first one. I feel like if the first one was not your cup of tea, you actually could you could probably just pick this one up by itself, honestly. But like, this one is, it was a little bit different. It wasn't quite the same. It wasn't quite as focused on the two main characters. There was a little bit more of the world that we get, and more of the magic system and the fantasy and all of that stuff. I like this one just a tiny bit less than I like the first one. If you're interested in my thoughts on the first one, there is a wrap-up, but I also did a Fresh Reads Friday review of it, so check that out. The only issue that I had with this book, because these are cheesy books. I'm not gonna lie. The romance is a little cheesy at times, but that's okay. I read romances to be cheesy. That's just what I read them for. But the only thing was, there was one point of view that we kept switching to, because it's not just Darvin and Kiara. There are two other points of view that we have in this novel that are building things. One of them I really liked because it does intersect with Darvin and Kiara's point of view, and so it was like, you're invested, like the end of that story is going to have, you can tell it's going to have impacts on their story. The other point of view, I was just bored with that character. I know that it's going to probably lead into book 3, but I was just like, do we have to deal with this person? Can we just, why is this in here? Like, why is it, like, it was giving you important information, but I was like, I could have done without this information if I didn't have to deal with this character that I don't, like, literally, they would get you to, like, these cliffhanger moments with either Darvin or Kiara, and we'd switch to this character, and I'd be like, I don't care about this person. Put me back where I was. I did like the fact that it was less focused on the romance and the personal, because, like, they're not together for most of this book. Like, there's a lot of this book that they, or at least half of this book, like, they spend apart, because there's a lot of build up to where they meet, then they get separated, and so, like, I liked how they ended up working together when they had to work together, but I also like the fact that it's the two of them on their own separate journeys. The romance just happens to be this nice thing that happens to them, while all of this other stuff that is bad is happening. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I cannot wait to get to the next book in the series. So the next book that I finished was Shah and the End of Time by Roshni Chokshi. This is the first book in the Rick Riordan Presents series, and it is also the first book in the Pandava Quartet. This is about Shah, and she finds out that she is the reincarnation, I guess, reincarnation works here, of one of the 5 Pandava brothers, who they're brothers that are very famous in Indian folklore. So she ends up having to go on, like, this epic journey because she's trying to impress some people, and she ends up, like, releasing something from a lamp that she's not supposed to touch, but she wanted to impress these people, and accidentally unleashes a great evil, a horrible being. I'm not entirely sure. We're only on the first book, and there are some things that we'll see how they play out. This was fast-paced, so fun. I flew through it in like 3 days as an audiobook. It was really, really just like easy to listen to, as I find that like a lot of middle grade books are, especially when you're following, like, this very much does follow that kind of Percy Jackson formula. I didn't mind it. I really liked how Roshni Chokshi kind of took what she knew, the Indian mythology that she knew. This is based on stuff from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, which are 2 Indian epic poems. I believe they are poems. I haven't read either of them, but I am going to after having read this book. She is putting them in the modern world, and I thought she did a really good job of doing that. I just love that, like, that setup where you have mythology in a modern setting. It just works for me. One of the highlights of this is Aru. She is 12. She's a disaster, and I love her. Like, she feels like it's so sad. She feels like she can't do anything right, and there's so much, like, baggage and stuff between her and her mom and all of this stuff, and she just felt so realistically like a teenage girl. Like, I can't tell you, like, whether or not Percy Jackson feels like a teenage boy. Like, yes, a lot of his decisions are like, yeah, that's something that a 12-year-old would make. I definitely recognize a lot of her insecurities when it comes to friendships and relationships, and they are things that I have carried with me since I was Aru's age. So like just being able, like there was just that extra level of connection where like Percy makes me laugh, but Aru makes me go, yeah, I've been there. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I thought it was fantastic, and I can't wait to see where the rest of the series goes. Now we get into the books that I read for Readathon, because I read all of those in like one weekend while we were doing the Ultron Readathon. First one that I finished that weekend though was Who Fears a Death by Nnedi Okorafor. This ended up counting for 2 prompts because I just didn't get to all of the books that I wanted to get to that weekend. It ended up counting for Court of Miracles, which was to read something about something hidden. And then it fulfills the prompt for Quasimodo because Nnedi Okorafor is a disabled author, and the prompt there was to read a book about a character or by an author who was disabled or has a chronic illness. So this is a post-apocalyptic novel set in Africa. It is about Onye-Sonwu. One thing I do want to point out is huge trigger warnings for rape and sexual violence for this book because Onye-Sonwu is a child of rape. The kind of, I guess, the inspiration for this novel was a part in Sudanese history where rape was being used as a weapon. And that very much carries into like huge parts of the plot in this book, but it's mostly about Onye-Sonwu trying to deal with the fact that not only is she marked as a child of a rape, because in this world that's something that you can see because she is lighter than everyone else, so they know that she is not her father's child, basically. It's about her having to deal with that and also having to deal with the fact that she has a magic inside of her that she is having to fight for people to teach her because she is a girl. This is the 3rd Nnedi Okorafor book that I have read. I think so far Akata Witch has been my favorite. Okorafor does writing, like writing style, the way she builds sentences is on point. Her characterization, she does such a good job with creating characters that are different, that are real, that are vibrant, that breathe off the page. Like, even the minor characters in this story, you know who's who. You are never going to get them confused because they are the characters, they're the people that they are. I really liked the fact that she has this very African-focused dystopian setting. It was really interesting because you'd forget that you weren't in a fantasy novel at times, and then she'd throw in like stuff that was like technology, because at this point I think technology is very rare, and so like she just throw in technology that you would like, it's everyday stuff, and you're sitting there going, oh yeah, this is in our world, this is the aftermath of something. It doesn't really go into whatever the something was, but this is the aftermath of something. I just really liked how she did that and how you could see her knowledge of the history coming forward in this dystopian setting. I also liked the magic system, but I do feel like, so like this magic system is very much like thought. It's not, there's not as much of the character learning. Like, she has this magic, she figures out how to use it, and a lot of the time she's figuring out how to use it in the moment. I think it's a very similar magic system to what she uses in Akata Witch, which I also really like. But in Akata Witch, we do see Sunny kind of struggling. We get to see more of her, like, actually learning. And because of the way that the plot is done in this book, we don't see as much of Onye-Sonwu actually learning. Like, there's a portion where we know that she is under the tutelage, but she also then just skips past that. This is not going to be a book for everyone because it is very like slow and ruminative. It is not told entirely in a linear manner. Like, she'll tell you something and then she'll backtrack to stuff, and that worked at the beginning. At the end, the plot got weird. This has happened to me in like the last 2 Nnedi Okorafor books, and this time I know I didn't miss anything. Like, I was paying attention and I would go back if I thought I'd missed something. So like, it just like, she just kind of felt like the ends of her books feel a little bit skipped. Plot just rushes real fast past you once you get past a certain point in her books. So I'm starting to think that as much as I like her characters and I like her writing, like, the plots are not going to necessarily be my favorite. Also, she did a thing in this book that I don't like it when the author does. I knew the thing was coming, so it wasn't as devastating as it would have been. But she did a thing in this book. It was good, but it made me mad. This got 3 stars. Like, I liked it. I would probably continue on if this was a series. It's not, it's a standalone, although it does have a little prequel novella. But it is not going to end up on my shelves. If the angle changed, please forgive me. I forgot to change out the battery before we started this thing. The next book that I finished was a reread, and it was just as good this time as it was the first time, and that is The Sound of Stars by Alicia Dow. So this book is about Ellie and Morris. We have a human girl and an alien boy, and Ellie is running this underground library, and it is underground because the aliens have taken over Earth and they have forbidden like art, music, any sort of like literature, anything that could give humans hope, they have outlawed. Morris is one of these alien creatures that has been sent ahead of the main thing that's coming to prepare Earth for habitation. And so part of his job is making sure that the humans are taken care of, and like he's also got some stuff he's doing on the side, but he is obsessed with music. And he finds out about this library and decides that he's going to use it to blackmail Ellie into helping him find music, because he needs more music for one of his side projects that he's doing. I love this book. I love the way that the relationship between Ellie and Morris builds. There are probably people that think it's insta-lovey. I do not. I think it's very sweet and cute, and it builds over like something like 2 weeks almost. So I think that's enough time for two people in a stressful situation to fall in love with each other. Like if you are looking for light, accessible sci-fi, definitely pick this one up because it's on Earth. The world building is really good. It's there. It's not devoid of world building because we have these aliens, but it is world building on top of a world we already know. So it is very easy to wrap your head around the science fiction aspect of this book because it's not overwhelming, it's not overbearing. It is really well worked into the narrative of the novel. I think my one like critique last time was I was like, some people may say the ending was sort of sudden. Y'all, when you know the significance of certain parts of this plot, you're going to be just sitting there going, oh, she was building to this the entire time, and I was just too dumb to see it the first time. This ended up getting 4 stars for me because I love it. It's so good. Final book that I finished in July. I finished literally yesterday, like 2 hours before the live show where I was supposed to talk about it. I'm not usually that close, but my brain just forgot what time was. And so I realized on Thursday that I had 2 days to finish the book, and I was 140 pages in. I ended up switching to the audiobook. It was a wonderful audiobook to listen to. I just love this book so much because it is so many of my favorite tropes are in this. I'm going to tell you what book this is. It's A Song of Praise and Ruin by Roseanne Brown. Karina is technically the Sultana of Zaran. She literally becomes Sultana at the beginning of this book. That's part of the plot, don't worry. Her mom has just like literally died at the beginning of this big festival, the Solstasia festival, and she finds out that if she can get certain ingredients, by the end of the Solstasia festival, she has a spell that she can use to resurrect her mother. So one of the things that she needs for that spell, though, is the Heart of a King. She is currently unmarried, so she decides the way she's gonna solve that is there's this big championship that's a part of Solstasia, and she is going to let the victor of that marry her, is what she decides. That's the prize. On the other hand, we have Malik, whose sister has been kidnapped by a creature that he thought was a myth, but ends up being real. So he's trying to get his sister back, and what the thing asks of her to get his sister back, the deal he makes, is to kill Karina. So they're both trying to kill each other. The people who accurately guessed that I was going to love this book, you were right. It is the princess and the thief trope, but the stakes are like dialed up to 10. It was I loved it. It had so many tropes in it. I really liked the slow build that we have between Karina and Malik. I know a lot of my friends are going to disagree with me, but I also like read them both as kind of some sort of demi or ace. I feel like mostly demi, and it was so interesting to read a book where we have two characters that are experiencing parts of attraction that very much align with how I have experienced attraction and infatuation in my life. Now, I do definitely think we have an infatuation and attraction in this book. It is not love yet, but book two could deliver, guys. It could. I'm ready for it. And I love the world building. I would definitely check out Christine's review of this book. I think she did a review of it. I don't know if she gets into it, but she did mention in the live show, at least that we did yesterday, that a lot of what is going on in this is based on Ghanaian history, which is where the author is from, which I didn't know. I really liked the fact that there's a lot of stuff that is tackled in this that you see being tackled time and time again by marginalized authors. But in this case, it was a purely African lens that we were looking through. Like, there was no European part of it. There was no Eurocentric part at all. Like, white people were not even a concept. And I really liked the fact that she was able to still tackle these things, because there are things that have existed in every part of history. And so she's able to tackle these things in a way that wasn't Eurocentric, and I really appreciated that. I really liked that. I really liked seeing, okay, how does someone who is not currently part of a colonial power or not benefiting from colonialism at this moment, how do they see, how do they tackle colonialism? I just, like, that was one thing that stood out to me, and then finding out that it is actually based on Ghanaian history. I love when things are based on history. The politics in this book are on point. They are so twisty and weird, and she keeps you guessing, not just with the politics, but just with, in general, the plot. Like, Roseanne Brown does this fantastic thing where she will lead you up to a plot point. She will have you going, I know what is going to happen. And it happens. Like, she is putting the foreshadowing and the building in there. But it happens in a way that you're not going to expect. Like, there's a character death. I'm not going to say whose death it is. There is a character death in this. Actually, there are a couple. But, like, there is one specific instance of character death where I was like, oh, I pegged it really early on. This character, gonna bite it. They are dead. They are dead, dead, dead. Like, we will see you later, Finnick. But I had a very different idea of how that scene was going to play out than what actually happened. And what actually happened then springboarded something into something else that I had guessed and completely twisted and changed that other thing that I guessed. Like, so just if you're someone who likes to kind of guess at things but still wants to be surprised, read this book. It's amazing. If anyone is wondering, I don't think you are at this point, it got 5 stars. All right, so we're at the end of the video, which means it is time for me to tell you what my favorite and least favorite book of the month are. Again, I don't think anyone is going to need to guess at the fact that this was my favorite book of the month. I just, like, the best book that I read this month. And I read some pretty good ones. Like, I read some that I really enjoyed. But this was my favorite, and I wish I had the second book. Least favorite book I am going to have to say was Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed other books more this month. Let me know down in the description box below, what was your favorite book in July? What was your least favorite book in July? Let me know your thoughts on those. If you are not feeling chatty but you still want to let me know that you watched the end of the video, go ahead and leave a knife emoji in the comments. If you know, you know. If you've read the book, you know which book this is referenced to, but I'm not going to spoil nothing for nobody. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video, you may enjoy some of the videos over here. Whether you're new, whether you just missed maybe one of them, go ahead, check these out. And if you end up liking these and you are new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Please and thank you. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!